In the summer of 1941, in the sweltering heat of the American South, a child was born into a country that had yet to decide if he could change it. Jesse Jackson came into the world in Greenville, South Carolina, a place where Jim Crow laws were not whispered about, but enforced with violence, fear, and humiliation. Here, black children drank from separate water fountains. Schools were deliberately unequal. Dreams ended at the color of your skin. Raised by a teenage mother, Jesse grew up in poverty, surrounded by silence and struggle. And yet, even in the quiet, a fire burned inside him, a voice refusing to be silenced. He was a gifted student, a talented athlete, a young man who felt the weight of injustice long before he could name it. But brilliance offered no shield in Greenville's streets. He saw neighbors beaten for speaking out. Dreams died quietly behind closed doors. Justice was not given. It had to be demanded. And then the world revealed itself on a screen. Television flickered with images that would change him forever. Children knocked down by fire hoses, police, dogs attacking peaceful protesters, churches blown apart, bodies carried away. America was finally seeing what black families had endured for generations. Jesse watched. And something inside him ignited. This was not mere cruelty. This was a system. He left the South carrying both ambition and anger, arriving in Chicago, a city of opportunity shadowed by racism. Here, he encountered the rising tide of the civil rights movement, a wave of courage that refused to bow. At its center stood a preacher whose words moved mountains. Martin Luther King Jr. For Jesse Jackson, survival was no longer enough. He wanted to change the world. The quiet boy from segregated streets was becoming a voice of resistance, a leader in waiting, a man shaped by pain and driven by purpose, and history had not yet felt his presence. Asterisk, asterisk, by the early 1960s. America was on edge. College campuses buzzed with protest. Southern streets shook under hymns and raised fists. The old order was cracking. And into the chaos stepped a young man unwilling to wait another century for freedom. At the heart of it all was Jesse Jackson. No longer just a witness to injustice, he had become a soldier in its undoing. He joined the inner circle of Martin Luther King Jr., becoming one of the youngest, fiercest organizers in the movement. Jesse didn't march quietly. He organized boycotts. He rallied students. He spoke with a fire that made crowds lean forward, listening, hoping, believing. Through the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, he helped build strategies that combined moral authority with relentless pressure. Every protest carried risk. Baton strikes cracking against shields, tear gas swirling, jail cells waiting. And Jesse showed up anyway, in towns where sheriffs vowed violence, in communities paralyzed by fear, in marshes where survival was never guaranteed. He stood on the front lines in Selma, crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge where blood stained the pavement and America's conscience. And each time the world tried to silence the movement, Jesse Jackson's voice grew louder. He wasn't just echoing Dr. King's dream, he was translating it into action for young people. Factory workers, families who felt forgotten. Where others feared arrest, he saw opportunity. Where others hesitated, he charged forward. Leadership came at a cost. He was jailed, threatened, followed. His phone tapped. His life constantly under watch. Yet through it all, he carried one simple belief. Dignity was non-negotiable. Then came April 4th, 1968. A single gunshot in Memphis. A nation collapsing in grief. Martin Luther King Jr. was gone. Jesse Jackson. It was more than the loss of a mentor. It was the moment the torch passed. The movement did not end that day. It transformed. And Jesse Jackson stood ready to carry it forward, into boardrooms, into ballot boxes, into the very heart of American power. The street organizer was becoming a national force. And the country was about to hear his name like never before. Asterisk, asterisk. The assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. left a wound in America that refused to heal. Cities burned. Hope trembled. Many believed the dream had died with him, but Jesse Jackson saw something different. He saw a responsibility dot where once he had marched beside a legend. Now he would build a movement of his own, one that reached beyond protest signs and into the systems that shaped everyday life dot in the years that followed. Jesse founded Operation PUSH, a bold effort to demand economic equality, fair hiring, and corporate accountability. He understood that freedom without opportunity was only half a victory. From grocery chains to television networks, from universities to major corporations, Jackson applied pressure where it hurt most: reputation, revenue, and influence. And work.doors long sealed shut began to crack open. Black workers were hired. Scholarships expanded. Minority-owned businesses gained access to contracts once reserved for the powerful few. But Jesse's vision stretched far beyond economics. He believed political power was the next frontier dot in 1984. Something unthinkable happened. A black civil rights leader, born under segregation, stood on the national stage and declared his candidacy for President of the United States. The campaign wasn't just about winning. It was about representation. About telling every marginalized American, black, Latino, poor, working class that the White House belonged to them too. Crowds packed stadiums. Churches overflowed. Young people registered to vote in record numbers. They called it the Rainbow Coalition, a movement of many races, many struggles, many hopes united under one banner. While the presidency remained out of reach, Jesse Jackson did something no one before him had done. He reshaped American politics. He proved that a coalition of the overlooked could shake the foundations of power. 4 years later, in 1988, he ran again, stronger, louder, more organized. Millions of votes, states carried, standing toe-to-toe with the political establishment. America was being forced to confront a new reality. The son of segregation had become a contender for the highest office in the land. But beyond campaigns and crowds, Jesse continued stepping into moments of national crisis. He negotiated hostage releases overseas. He mediated racial conflicts at home. He showed up where America was breaking and demanded it do better to supporters. He was a champion of justice. To critics, a disruptor of the status quo, but to history, he was undeniable. A bridge between the civil rights era and modern political power. A man who turned march into momentum. A voice that refused to fade. Asterisk, asterisk, by the 1990s, Jesse Jackson had become one of the most recognizable voices in America. His presence commanded headlines. His words could shift public debate. From protest lines to presidential stages, he had spent decades fighting for justice in a nation still struggling to live up to its promises. But the longer the fight continued, the heavier the burden became. Leadership, Jesse learned, was not only about victories. It was about endurance. He expanded his work through the Rainbow Push Coalition, pushing for voter registration, education reform, fair wages, and access to technology in underserved communities. While many of his contemporaries stepped back, Jesse pressed forward, traveling endlessly, speaking relentlessly, refusing to slow the pace of change. Yet, behind the speeches and packed auditoriums was a man facing his own struggles. Public life brought constant scrutiny. Personal mistakes became headlines. Critics questioned his judgment. Supporters wrestled with disappointment. For a moment, it seemed the movement's hero might be defined by his flaws rather than his decades of service. But Jesse did what he had always done. He faced it. He spoke openly about responsibility, forgiveness, and growth. He reminded America that leaders, too, are human. That progress is not made by perfect people, but by persistent ones. Even as controversy swirled, communities called on him in moments of pain, when racial tensions erupted after police violence, when cities fractured along lines of fear and anger. When families sought justice after tragedy, Jesse Jackson was there, walking streets, standing with grieving mothers, demanding accountability from those in power. He met with presidents. He challenged lawmakers. He negotiated where others shouted. He marched where others hesitated. The years began to show in his stride. His voice sometimes softened, But the fire never left. Then came a new battle, one no protest could prepare him for. Parkinson's disease slowly altered his body, forcing him to confront a future where movement and speech would no longer come easily. For a man whose life had been built on presence and voice, it was a cruel twist of fate. Yet, even in illness, he remained a symbol of resilience, appearing at rallies, supporting new generations of activists, passing wisdom to those now carrying the struggle forward. The movement had changed. The faces were younger. The battles looked different, but the foundation Jesse helped build still stood, and through every hardship, he proved something deeper than leadership. He proved endurance. Asterisk. Today, the name Jesse Jackson carries weight far beyond speeches, marches, or campaigns. It carries history. It carries struggle. It carries hope. From the segregated streets of Greenville to the halls of the White House, from the front lines of protests to the global stage of diplomacy, Jesse Jackson has spent a lifetime reminding America its promises and its failings. His voice has carried the cry of the marginalized, the demand of the oppressed, the plea of the unheard. Generations of activists trace their footsteps to him. Young people, black and white, Latino and Asian, poor and working class, look back and see someone who refused to accept the boundaries of his birth. He showed that courage could become strategy, vision could become policy, and moral clarity could bend systems built for oppression. His legacy is human, a tapestry of triumphs and mistakes, victories and setbacks. And it is precisely this, humanity, that gives it power. Because in Jesse Jackson, Americans see that the pursuit of justice is never clean, never simple, and never finished. They see a struggle worth embracing, imperfect, relentless, enduring, even as age and illness slow his body. His influence continues. His words echo in classrooms and community halls. His example guides politicians and protesters alike. The Rainbow Push Coalition carries forward the work he began decades ago. Every election, every policy fight, every act of activism stands on a foundation he helped lay, the belief that equality is not optional and dignity belongs to all. But the truest measure of his life is not in votes, awards, or accolades. It is in the lives he touched. The young boy or girl who sees a path where none existed. The oppressed worker who finds courage to demand fairness. The nation itself, forced time and again to confront its own conscience because he refused to. Lookaway.history will remember Jesse Jackson not as a flawless man, but as a man who refused to be silent in the face of injustice, who transformed grief into action, anger into strategy, and hope into a movement in the quiet moments, long after the crowds have dispersed. His legacy whispers a truth America still struggles to live up to. Freedom is a fight. Justice is a journey, and one determined voice can change the course of a nation. For Jesse Jackson, the dream is not just remembered. It is carried forward, alive, burning, unstoppable.